Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week, I wanted to talk about the idea of perfection and how perfection really is a myth in a lot of different ways, but specifically when it comes to art. And I feel that the pursuit of perfection is kind of like pursuing a mirage. It's always on the horizon. It's always tantalizing you, but it's not something that you can reach. However, having said that, I still think that the idea of perfection is something that you should pursue. Just don't try to achieve it. And I'm gonna break that down a little bit more. So I feel that the good enough lifestyle when it comes to creating things is really kind of the sweet spot. And for me anyway, obviously I can't speak for everybody. Some people like the very minute detailed stuff and other people like the really rough stuff. And everything's fine, but I feel that if you're looking for a happy medium when it comes to making things, that finding your version of good enough is probably one of the most valuable things that you can do. When it came to the 2-hour track challenge, for me, I started doing the challenge, just kind of doing the best I can and just kind of making do with what I had and the time within the time limit. And these days, when I do the challenge, it's more about finding what's good enough so I can move on and work on the next section of the song. When I started, I wasn't able to. First of all, I didn't have the technical capabilities that I do now, so I was working much slower. But secondarily, I didn't know what was good enough for me, so I just kind of flailed around on certain ideas until I ran out of time. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it was definitely detrimental to the work that I was doing. Now, when I know something is good enough, I'm able to kind of put a button on it and move on from that. And if I need to go back and revise something, I can go back and revise it. But I know that it's good enough for the time being, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can kind of take it off my mental load, which is incredibly valuable to me. So beyond that, just the idea of perfection is something that is really hard to make everybody happy with. You're never going to make a song that everybody enjoys. So pursuing perfection in that regard seems kind of pointless in some ways, because you're not going to please everybody. You're going to please a certain subset of people, sure, and you'll probably impress them if it's technically perfect for you, but I feel that there's a huge amount of diminishing returns when it comes to pursuing perfection, where, in my case, I can make a song in 2 hours, and the song is either good to passable to great, depending on the inspiration for that day. But I could spend an extra 2 hours polishing it to get it an extra 10% better, and then I could spend another 2 hours beyond that polishing it to get an extra 5% better. And the more time I pour into this particular song is I'm getting less and less results out of it. And the time that I'm pouring into that particular song, I could be making new ideas with, instead of trying to make this one particular track perfect. And I think that that's really the main part of the problem, because you could focus all your time and effort on one particular thing. And again, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's not necessarily how I want to spend my time. Or maybe you don't want to spend your time that way either. Like I'm just giving you some options here. I'm not saying what's right, but the amount of time that you spent on one thing could be used to make 3 things. And then you have 3 things that you could either decide to polish or just keep working on new things. When I do my 2-hour challenge, I do it as fast. I do the song in 2 hours and I just release it to YouTube that way. But then I go back when I'm compiling the album and I spend a little extra time to polish and refine and I mean, I've been listening to these songs for like a year now, so I have little tweaks and changes that I feel that are necessary to the song to make it a little bit better. And I'm able to kind of whip through all 14 or 15 songs in the album over a weekend, and then the album's done. Like, I feel that the process that I have allows me to find my good enough, and then I am able to take that good enough and find whatever little flaws that I see in that and get that to really where I want it to be overall. But finding perfection is something that's really dangerous, and I really stress that you shouldn't try to make anything perfect, because pursuing perfection is like pursuing a mirage. You're always going to move toward it, and you always should move toward it, but you're never going to reach it. And at some point you have to realize that you're wasting your time pursuing perfection where you could be working on something new. And I think that that's really the most important thing to take away from that. So yeah, move toward perfection, but don't try to achieve it. I guess that's a good way to distill it down. Anyway, thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you next week. Be remarkable.